friends. It is the start of summer here. Officially today, it's summer solstice while I'm recording this. And this month, I am bringing you a story that happened just a couple of weeks ago on the farm. Last month's episode focused on some of the odd nests and places we have found mamas and their babies hatching on the farm. And coincidentally enough, this June brought us yet another one of those situations. It is a surprising tale involving one very lucky and perhaps magical duckling that appeared out of nowhere a few weeks ago. As you know from May's episode, we are in the full swing of chick season. And this year we have had more chicks at one time than any other year, thanks to a buy more than 15, get each chick for $1 sale at Tractor Supply that we had frankly taken a little too much advantage of. We ended up with almost 30 chicks at one time, and they had quickly outgrown the brooder in the garage and needed access to a rolling pen so that they could spread out a bit. However, in late May, that had even become insufficient. They were crowded and pooping constantly and needed to have access to more space. When we reached that point with chicks, and it came sooner when we had almost 30 at once, we usually start by propping up the bottom of the rolling pen so that the chicks can get out and get back in, but the pen isn't high enough off the ground that adult chickens can get in their pen and eat their food. So this particular morning, I had decided that it would be the first day of letting them have free range by propping up the pen. We propped it up when we went out to do morning chores, and the chicks gradually figured out that they could run in and out, exploring and hunting bugs, and generally having a grand old time. However, I had not accounted for the weather. You see, it has been unusually dry in Virginia for some time now. In fact, we're officially in a state of extreme drought, which is probably the worst that it's been since we've been living here anyway. And we really, really need rain. But at this point, it hadn't rained. Every day for that last week or so, rain had been forecast and had failed to materialize. I always worry a little bit about getting big storms when we have chicks outside, and that's because I don't want them to get wet or cold or lost. So I had held off on letting this batch of chicks out to explore. But by that morning, I was fed up with waiting for the rain. I assumed we were having yet another false alarm, we weren't going to get rain, and I let them out anyway. As it turns out, it was extremely fortunate that I did. I was working inside when a fierce afternoon thunderstorm rolled in. I immediately kicked myself for letting the chicks out, but it was too late to do anything about it now. There was no way I'd be able to round up 30 chicks in a thunderstorm. They would either find their way back to the pen or find a place to shelter outside of it, and I would have to check on them when it was over. The storm blew itself out relatively quickly, and when it had decreased to a gentle patter of rain, I went out to check on how the chicks had fared. I lifted the lid of the rolling pen and was instantly relieved to see what looked like about 30 chicks there. I was doing a count when I suddenly did a full double take in a way I'm not sure I've ever done before. It was like one of those cartoon double takes when you look away and then you go, whoa, wait a minute, and you look slowly back. I had even started to lower the lid, seeing that it looked about like the right number of chicks, but something was tickling the back of my brain because my brain had registered something quite impossible. There, mixed in among these chicks, I could swear that I had seen a duckling. However, that was impossible because we didn't have any ducklings. We only had chicks. We had not purchased any ducklings, and ducklings simply do not appear out of thin air. I told myself it was impossible. Yet, when my brain caught up with what it had seen and I lifted the lid to look again, sure enough, there was a tiny duckling in the pen with the chicks. It was an actual certified mystery. Where had it come from? When had it gotten there? If it had been out in the storm, if the pen hadn't been lifted, if it hadn't found its way to the chicks, it almost certainly would have died of cold. But that day, we had lifted the pen. And sometime during that day, a duckling had appeared. And now there was a duckling huddled in among the chicks, looking confused but not unhappy. Some investigation and dot connecting quickly led us to at least part of the answer, at least we think, though certain aspects of this are always going to be a mystery. We knew it almost certainly had to have come from a duck hen that has been nesting in the chicken coop. She is what's called a rouan, which is basically a domesticated, slightly larger mallard. Unlike their wilder cousins, rouans don't tend to decide that they want to migrate and fly away, which is a problem that we've had when raising mallards, especially from rescued nests. But that's not something you have to worry about with rouan. In addition to this hen, we have 4 other rouans right now, 3 males and 1 other female. One of the males has a giant poof of feathers on his head, and we call him Poof Head. And one of the females, this nesting mama in question, has been absolutely determined to try to hatch babies this year. She had set herself up with this nest in the chicken coop and diligently sat there for most of every day, getting up periodically to waddle around the barnyard, absolutely screaming her head off, talking about, I assume, how boring it is to brood duck eggs all day. It sounds kind of like wah, 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 wah. If you talk to her when she's not doing that and say, oh, hi, Mama, how's it going? What's up? She'll look at you and go, wah, 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 until you stop talking to her. She's very responsive. As you may also remember from previous episodes, duck eggs take longer to incubate and hatch than chick eggs, and the length of time depends on the breed of duck. In the case of Rouen, it's about 27 days. And it had been a rather dramatic nesting period for this duck hen so far. So I really hadn't thought she would even hatch anything. Because in addition to choosing a very high traffic area within the chicken coop so that she's constantly being bothered by chickens and ducks and yelling at them about them being too close to her nest, we also currently have a gigantic black rat snake that lives in the barn and loves nothing more than a warm, actively brooded egg. I was in the house working on something, and the kids ran fully screaming from the barn a few weeks ago to let me know that this giant black rat snake in question was in the duck's nest eating her eggs and begging me to come drop everything and get down to the barn immediately. By the time I made it to the barn, the hen was standing to the side of her nest, screaming at the snake, but not doing much otherwise. And the snake had unhinged its jaw and was in the process of trying to fit one of her extremely large eggs into its mouth. I ran the snake off with the kids screaming bloody murder the whole time, and the duck got back on her nest down to about 2 eggs. One had been cracked open in the shuffle, and the other 4 or 5 she had been sitting on had been, I guess, eaten by the snake. Not sure if that was just from the one session and the snake had really been enjoying itself or if it had visited her over several days, but at any rate, she had 2 eggs left. Honestly, I hadn't been monitoring her that closely to know how long the eggs had left. It could have been anywhere from a week to 3 weeks to almost a full month because other chickens and ducks also have a bad habit of going and laying in her nest when she's on one of her barnyard shambles. So it's hard to know, especially with the snake getting in there, exactly how old any given egg is at any point in time. In fact, for a future spoiler alert, I went in and talked to her in the chicken coop just yesterday because she's still sitting, and she got up. And I don't know if she was trying to distract me and lure me away from her nest or if she just wanted to show it off, but I noticed that she's on about 5 eggs, one of which is very clearly a bright turquoise chicken egg. So I really had no sense for what was going to happen with the batch of 2 remaining eggs a few weeks ago. We left her brooding those 2 eggs, and I kept a closer eye on the chicken coop over the next week or so. But when there wasn't any sign of further snake activity and there wasn't any sign of hatching babies, I kind of just forgot about it. As often happens, I just figured, the eggs are probably duds, and I stopped thinking about it. So this duckling, this mystery duckling, had to have come from her. The other ducks are too young to be laying eggs, and she is the only broody one around, as far as I know. I went to the chicken coop to check my theory, And at the coop, the broody duck immediately started yelling at me and got up to show me her nest. Sure enough, there was the shell of a hatched duck egg next to her other single remaining egg. Now, I felt confident that I knew the origin of the duckling, but I still had no idea how it could have gotten from her nest in the middle of the chicken coop all the way to the rolling pen a couple 100 feet away during a rainstorm. That part is, frankly, still something of a mystery. My current best guess is that the mom took one of her nesting breaks where she whacks around the barnyard, and the duckling must have followed her. She hasn't been a mom before, and she maybe didn't even notice that she had a duckling, and at some point, I assume she walked away from it or she was mean to it and it got worried about continuing to follow her, and at any rate, they became separated. This duckling, being apparently both enterprising and very lucky, must have found and attached itself to the group of chicks and followed them into their pen when it started raining. And thus, it became yet another one of our ducks that is raised with and probably believes it is a chicken. This tends to become especially ridiculous as the duckling ages because ducklings grow much faster than chicks. We ended up putting it with a smaller, younger group of chicks that we had in the garage because it was such a new baby that it needed a little more protection and warmth, and it quickly bonded to that group. They are all a few weeks old now, and the duckling, frankly, looks like Godzilla next to the chicks it's being raised with. It's at least 3 times their size and very noisy. But they all get along, and they have, over the last few days, just been given free-ranging privileges themselves. Since the duck hen, its mother, is still sitting on her nest, there is a decent chance we're going to end up with another weird situation, like that chicken egg that she's sitting on hatching before all the other eggs. But I can't imagine we're going to end up with another scenario quite like this one, which has been an absolute first for me in 30 plus years of chicken and duck raising. There may be nothing new under the sun, but it seems there is still a lot that's new to me when it comes to managing an animal farm. That's the story of our one very lucky duckling for this month. And for those of you on summer vacation, I hope you're enjoying it. I will see you back here soon. In the meantime, if you want to see lots of pictures and videos of chickens, ducks, and their babies, check out our Instagram at Foggy Oak Fairy Tales, which heavily features our various feathered friends on the farm. I will post the one from when I found this duckling there soon so that you can see exactly what it was like finding this random duckling in our gigantic batch of chicks. See you next month. Bye.